Yesterday, President Obama got up before a group and actually a press conference, and here's what he had to say.
The number of Americans who've signed up for private insurance in the marketplaces has grown to 8 million people. 8 million people. 35% of people who enrolled through the federal marketplace are under the age of 35.
Now, that's what the president had to say yesterday. Wanted to get some thoughts on that this morning. Clark Hodges, a financial strategist at Hodges Capital, joins us every Friday about this time. Good morning, Clark. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Gary?
I'm doing very well, and a happy Easter weekend to you. And, lots to think about. But you heard the president there yesterday. He said, okay, we're up to 8 million now. 35% are the young invincibles, so to speak. And his staff afterward kind of came out and said, wait, it might not be 35, might be closer to like 25, 28, something like that. The president continues to take victory laps with this, and he also said, well, it's working, and healthcare costs are down and so forth. But the fact is, it's just now coming into existence, so how could it be responsible for healthcare costs going down that significantly?
Well, it can't. It's kind of going to be a little scoreboard, I guess. We hear every 500,000, we're going to get an update from the president. Seems like it was 7, 7.5, now it's 8. And, like we said before, I don't trust any number that comes out of the White House. I think it's all cooked books, and, anybody, in my opinion, that trusts that number is a fool.
When you talk to business people out there, how do they view Obamacare now since the sign-up and the dust is clearing? Of course, we still have the corporate mandate to deal with next year, and I'm sure with a lot of companies that people you talk to, that's got to be a concern. So what are they saying?
The companies, the CEOs, the boards of directors out there, when it comes to Obamacare, they're not worried about the sign-up because that's people who aren't on a health plan at a company. They're not worried so much about that. They're worried about the cost of implementing stuff that they don't know about, the mandates. And I was in a shareholder meeting the other day, and one of the first questions after the presentation was, what about Obamacare? And the answer was, we don't know yet. We still don't know. It's an unknown, and it continues to kind of hang over heads. And it's one contributing factor to the slow recovery that's going on in our economy.
When does this all kind of start to come down on companies? I mean, most people are saying like in October. I mean, you've got to make plans for next year, right? And so people are going to be sitting back looking and seeing how it is for individuals. Will the costs stay down? If they go up, what's that going to do for people who are out there and want to keep their insurance for their employees, and yet they see the cost skyrocketing? If that happens, wouldn't a lot of them tend to want to drop their insurance coverage and let people go on their own to the exchanges?
I think that's a definite stance that does happen. Honestly, it's one of those things that's so confusing. And I think to a lot of people, health insurance, by and large, has been a confusing thing. I think one of the things about health insurance that has always kind of confused people is it's not a bill that they see usually because you're employed, it's taken out of your check. I think if it was a bill that you see, like your electric bill or your car payment or something, then you would over time get a better understanding of how it affects your monthly cash flow needs. But it's such an area that I personally am confused by in a lot of ways, and I had to sit down with people in my firm that handle all this and ask questions after questions. So it's a confusing issue to begin with, and it's probably going to get more confusing. And I think you're going to have a lot of CEOs and boards of directors who are confused and not know how to implement things. But still, the bottom line is it's going to probably increase costs of hiring people, which will in turn lead to layoffs and or people going from full-time to part-time.
Yeah, and I think that's the big concern for a lot of people right now as they look at this whole thing. As you look back on this week, Clark, are there any good numbers that really jump out at you that make you feel kind of good about the economy?
I don't see anything particularly this week that jumps out. The market is really going through what I see as a transition time. Now, that's good for investors who are maybe in more blue chip, more conservative type equities. Those kinds of equities have been acting good. The momentum stocks have been kind of doing a turnover, and they've been kind of acting bad. And that's really, that's fine. That's going to happen in a good market. and the market's a little bit iffy to people. I think this week, by and large, people are very concerned about where the market is headed, and it's kind of coming to a head here this week, and that's really the thing I see.
One of the things that's happening right now is a lot of people are starting to see, for example, with food, that the inflation is just going up rapidly, and especially when you see some of the meats and so forth out there, you're seeing big prices when you head out to the grocery store now. That certainly has got to be a concern for people, and then where they're going to put their money.
That's a concern that happens pretty fast. You definitely see transportation costs and stuff like that. It can increase the cost of getting goods from the farm to the store to the restaurant to your home. And meat, beef has been an issue. And you mentioned inflation, and inflation is something that everybody really needs to understand what that means. And I remember growing up, my father, who's in the investment business with us, he always said, in 1973, if you had $100,000, you could go down to the Cadillac store and buy 10 Cadillacs.
Right.
But in 2003, if you had $100,000, you could go down to the store and buy one Cadillac. And
right.
his example was one that if you had that $100,000 and put it in a bond for 30 years, when you got that $100,000 back, it wouldn't buy as much as it used to. And so you need investments that can beat inflation, which is what a Warren Buffett and those kinds of guys are out there doing. They're trying to beat inflation instead of having your investments in a bond, which doesn't beat inflation. So people need to realize that while they're going about their business and their daily and their monthly lives, they need to have something set aside that will beat inflation so that they can keep their lifestyle, keep buying goods today, in the future, that are going to be higher prices than they are today.
I was looking at the jobless claims yesterday, and they were around 304,000, and that's near a 7-year low right now, and I continue to look at more and more people getting back into the job market. So certainly that's positive, and we're glad to see that. I was also thinking about, though, and I think we had talked about last week, I wonder, once again, as we kind of end a lot of the welfare payments or entitlement payments for people who are able to work, if those people who are able to work aren't getting back into the market, if that certainly doesn't have a great effect on it.
I think it does. The numbers are, that's the main thing people talk about is the job numbers, the unemployment rate, the all those kinds of things. And it's just a slow process to get back to a better number. But to me, full employment is going to be a lower number going forward, or higher number, going forward, because of technology, because of permanent type layoffs that will never come back based on technology, because there's still a lot of money overseas that's going to keep jobs from being created here in the United States because that money's going to stay overseas because of the tax rates.
Speaking of tax rates, of course, this week kind of always a popular week because people have to get their taxes done. When you look at taxes, and we hear people talk about tax reform around this time of year all the time. We never do anything about it, but we talk about tax reform. So if you were president for a day, what kind of tax reform would you make in this country?
I'd try to do some sort of flat tax.
Yeah.
I think if you did a flat tax, you'd get more revenue and more participation. I think the fact that the tax code, if you will, is so confusing that if you could have a tax code where most Americans don't need to hire a CPA to do their taxes because of all the different things that you can write off and things that you can't, and different rules that really change overnight that you have no awareness of, whether it's if you're in some sort of business that the tax rules change, or limited partnership but that tax rules change, and those kinds of things happen so fast. Estate planning would be a lot easier. And I think that if it were me, you could do a flat tax and basically have a 95% participation rate, which would be much better for the country, I think. What
about the idea of a tax on just a national sales tax, or maybe one of these value-added taxes you hear about, the VAT taxes every now and then?
I think a national sales tax would hurt, retailers pretty bad. I think that would be considered, the retail lobby would be out there big time going against that. But, I live in Texas. We don't have a sales tax. We don't have an state income tax.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons our economy is so good is because over years and years and years, corporations have moved to Texas to make it better for their employees, and it's a state that's very pro-business, and it's paid off because of that tax.
You know, one of the things that people talk about a lot of time, coming back to your flat tax idea for a moment, the old Stephen Forbes thing, which is, when you have a tax like that, you're only taxed once at the source, and that's a pretty low rate. And so, if you think about it another way, people can keep 89 cents out of every dollar that they make, which obviously then lets more disposable type income to go out there and purchase goods and make the economy go, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You want people out there spending their money.
And again, no matter who you are in the economy, no matter what you make, you would have a chance here to really kind of have some skin in the game, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, skin in the game is a big, big motivation for people spending money. No doubt about it.
I was reading this one proposal this guy had for an 11% flat income tax, and he said, under this proposal, all income is taxed only once at its source when it's realized at one low rate. Everyone would pay the tax, regardless of income. There would be no deductions, exclusions, or exemptions. This would mean no more deductions for home mortgage interest, charitable contributions, state and local taxes. It would also mean that employee benefits, including health insurance, pension contributions, would no longer be excluded from taxable income. Moreover, there would be no longer tax-free municipal bonds, nor would individuals be able to make tax-free deposits and realize tax-free growth in their IRA and 401k accounts. In return, people will get to keep 89 cents of each additional dollar of income they earn. Does that sound like something that would work?
I think it does. I mean, you've obviously got a lot of factors there that you have to go over pretty severely in detail, and you probably have a lot of different groups pop up to be against this and against that. But on the surface, it seems very reasonable to be able to say, you get taxed at that rate and you keep 89 cents of every dollar you earn. That's a golly, I can't imagine how good the economy would be if you had that sort of thing. Yeah,
I think back, and I was talking to somebody the other day when I was born in 1951, and my parents, in all their taxes, paid about 5% of their income, and we were not wealthy by any means at that point in time. Today, what do you pay as a total percent of your income in taxes? 27, 28, 30% maybe? And you see, I'm being kind, and I'm saying just the idea that... what has that done over the years? Think about families where mom could stay home. Now mom's out working a lot of times. Now, sometimes because she wants to, other times because she's forced to. It really has changed our life drastically over the last 50 or 60 years.
Right, and you definitely have people who make more money paying more dollars than people who don't, and that's a fair system no matter how you cut it.
Clark, we're going to take a very quick break. We'll be right back with you. I want to talk a little bit more about the economy and some of the things related to that with Clark Hodges, financial strategist at Hodges Capital, here on the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA with Clark Hodges, financial strategist at Hodges Capital. Clark, it occurred to me, one of the things that I saw yesterday was that Fox came out with a poll that basically said not a lot of people in this country trust what the president has to say right now. And I don't just want to pick on the president here, but, I think there's a lot of lack of trust in this country right now in our very institutions because we feel like, I think Americans are feeling put upon, if that makes any sense, and that we're not getting the whole story. And not only that, not only are they not getting the whole story and are they not being told the truth, they also have a little bit of a ineptness at the top, too, people who really don't know what they're doing. Am I off base with that?
No, I think you're right on base. I think as I've grown more aware of politics and how the system works, I quite frankly don't believe any politician 100% when they talk. They're always at some point in the conversation talking so that they can get reelected. And they're at some point in time in our history, it became a career path to be a politician for the amount of money you could earn, not to serve our country. And so that's the main thing I see. The problem is that you're not serving our country. You're going up there to line your pockets with campaign dollars and be a celebrity, if you will. And I think that's the first thing that needs to be done is these people need to be paid just like the soldiers are paid. That's the amount of wage they can earn because they should be serving our country like our soldiers are doing. And that's just not the system that we have in place. And so I think every politician is at some point a liar, and I also think that every politician that puts his or her stamp of approval or vote on a bill has not read that bill.
Right.
There's no way they can. And so they're relying on interns and people that work with them to read portions of the bill and then report to them. So that system right there is just out of whack and messed up and skewed right from the beginning.
I think there are a lot of people that look at these representatives now and they say, okay, they're supposed to be representing us. Instead, we see a government that seems to be using things against us as weapons. I offer to you something Bloomberg News reported, that the IRS and other government agencies just awarded about $415,000 in contracts to Livermore, California-based Vigilance Solutions before the Department of Homeland Security dropped a plan for similar work after privacy concerns raised. What were they doing? Well, basically, they were trying to get access to nationwide data, and the Internal Revenue Service and other federal agencies reportedly awarded contracts to this license plate tracking company to provide access to license plate recognition databases or technology used to collect plate information. You know, a lot of us, we hear about the NSA, we hear about the IRS, what they're doing, the targeting of conservative groups by Lois Lerner and others. We hear about all this kind of stuff, and we start to say, wait a second. We look at the Justice Department coming down in Arizona for trying to enforce immigration laws in the U.S. Code. They get dashed down in the Supreme Court. And so a lot of people are sitting back saying, are we still the government of the country, or is it in the hands of a few people? I think that's really a problem, and it definitely affects our economy. It definitely affects the way we think about the welfare in our country.
You bet. I mean, if you get audited today, I think the first thing you're going to think of is, why are they picking on me? What's in my history, or what have I done to make this side of the political aisle mad at me? And you're definitely, you take a snapshot of this time in history, and it seems like, yes, you're targeted for your beliefs. And, sitting here telling you that, I'm on the radio saying it. It worries me that I might be targeted for my beliefs. And so it's just one of those, hopefully something that's not really as it seems, but it does have that perception right now. And hopefully it can change, because this is a country we should be able to stand up and say what we want without fear of retribution from our government financially for what we believe.
And yet at the same time, we were just reading a story the other day about Dr. Benjamin Carson, who's going to be in town here next week giving a speech. And we were talking about it a little over a year ago. He was at that prayer breakfast and stood up in front of President Obama and basically, whether it was appropriate or not, basically talked about where our country was and that a lot of the things flew in the face of President Obama. And apparently afterward, the White House called the people that had organized this prayer breakfast and said, hey, it was an affront to Mr. Obama. He insulted him. And Carson said, why? He said hello to me afterward. We talked. He said everything was friendly. I don't think I need to apologize at all. Later on, he gets audited that year. And, so now it goes back to the very point you were saying. Did I get audited because of that speech, or did I just get audited because it happens to be a coincidence?
Right. And because of what we now know as a fact about our government and what they look at, you got to believe you got audited because of that speech.
And I saw a new Fox News poll that basically came out yesterday and said they think the White House had IRS target conservatives. 49% of the people believe that. Now, again, did that happen? We don't know. But, perception is a very big thing to have to deal with many times if you're a politician.
Yeah, perception is reality to most people.
What are your thoughts? Final minute here, Clark. Just your thoughts on this Easter weekend and where we are in the country and your thoughts about the whole deal.
It's a great weekend. It's a family weekend. I particularly enjoy the spring and the flowers, and the grass is getting a little greener. It's a great time. Daylight savings time is in full effect. The days are a little bit longer. It's a spiritual holiday for everybody, and I love that aspect of it as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that today is my father's 80th birthday, and words can't put into place his influence on me in my life, and this being Good Friday and his birthday as well, I am very honored to say happy birthday to my dad, Don.
Well, and of course, Don also had a book out there that's pretty cool. There's a lot of quotes in there and a lot of good ideas, and I've read a lot about your dad. Very great man. So give him a happy birthday for us as well. I hope you'll do that, Clark.
I will, Gary. Thank you very much. Hope you have a great weekend.
Have a great Easter, and thank you so much, Clark. Appreciate you being with us this morning. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Clark Hodges, financial strategist with Hodges Capital.